Hello, I'm DinoMightyMiranda, your friendly neighborhood amateur Batman historian. And here we have the January roundup. So I kept track of every single comic book that I read in the month of January. And here we are going to put them on a tier list because everything kind of needs to be on a tier list. So just as a quick explanation of what we have going on here, at the very top, we have the DinoMight category. This is for books that I would recommend to others that I really enjoyed, that really kept me engaged. Just below that, we have Roarsome. These are books that are still really good. I would still recommend them, but you know, they didn't quite get that DinoMight tier. Underneath that is Stega Saw It. That is for books that are perfectly serviceable, right? They may not have been extraordinary, but I didn't have a bad time reading them. Underneath is It Triceratops. This is for books that, just didn't quite hit the mark for me. It's not that they're a bad book. It's just it didn't really fit my tastes, or there was some kind of a flaw within it for me. Underneath is Terrible. It feels a little bit self-explanatory. Again, this is all very subjective. This is very much being graded upon the scale of, did I enjoy this? Did I understand this? Did I think that this is a good story? And who am I? I'm a random person on the internet. And finally, we have an extinction level event. These are books that I question if anyone should be reading. I split the books into three categories. One, single issues. These are the books that I am following month to month that I read. Two, the sidekicks reads. I'll talk a little bit less about them just because I have a podcast and I spend roughly 2 hours talking about them every single week. And finally, we have the graphic novels and the collections. I'm a big fan of my local library. I have read a lot of books by just grabbing them off shelves and checking them out. Let's get into it. All right, starting us off with single issues, we have Absolute Batman #4. This is the inevitable flashback issue of Snyder and Dragotta's already absolutely amazing Batman reimagining. This issue explores young baby Bruce Wayne's journey to the absolute unit he becomes, as well as his philosophy as a Batman. It was a banger. We love teacher parents, even when they're Thomas Wayne. And the theme that people need to be given the tools to save themselves was a brilliant commentary on Batman, both within the Absolute Universe and in main continuity. And the Dystopian Dance Battle Charity Gala is gonna live rent-free in my brain case for years to come. DinoMight. Everyone should read it. Next, we have Absolute Superman #3. The energy really ramps up in this one. It is entirely set in flashback back on Krypton as the Elves learn the truth so many of us here on Earth are already grappling with. Ignorance is enforced through violence to keep the elite comfortable. And when that ignorance has consequences, the elite will not save you. This continues to be probably my most anticipated book of the month. So absolutely, it is DinoMight. Finally, rounding out our Absolute trilogy, we have Absolute Wonder Woman #3. Steve Trevor must go home, but it is not such an easy task, leaving hell. It requires great sacrifice. In the present, Diana must face an unimaginable threat to protect this world. This issue struck my heart. I was spoiled for the twist. I'm not going to say it here in case you haven't been spoiled, but even so, Thompson's writing and Sherman and Belair's art really kept sweeping me along. I would say this was the moment that the overall story being told really hit me. For that reason alone, this is DinoMight. Can't wait to read what they've cooked up next. And finally, we have the Exorcism of 1600 Penn #1. What happens when evil comes to the White House? In the wake of the election of the first female president, odd things begin to plague the First family as they settle into their new normal, haunted by constant scrutiny and the looming threat of World War III. This issue establishes the characters whose lives are going to be rocked by the demonic and oh so very human forces that want to watch them fail. Equal parts haunting and isolating, nonetheless, this is a story about a family trying to support each other just to get by. I am eager to continue the series. DinoMight. Transitioning into my reads for the sidekicks, there's only 2 this month. Ghost Rider #68, The Curse of Johnny Blaze, and Batman 0 Year, Dark City and Savage City. I'm not going to speak too much on these ones just because, again, There is a lot of content to me yapping about them. You can find it wherever you listen to podcasts. But Ghost Rider 68, The Curse of Johnny Blaze. On a dark and stormy night, a haunted man stumbles into a church seeking confession. But are his sins really the ones needing to be punished? This one was a fun older read. It really got me excited about like Ghost Rider as a character. It's worrisome. Batman Zero Year, Dark City and Savage City. This is 2/3 of the retold origin story for the New 52 Batman. Gotham is in the dark. A serial killer is haunting the streets, and the Riddler is looming. A young Batman must decide who to trust and what his mission really means as the city is plunged into chaos. This book would be DinoMighty if I wasn't so mad at myself for not reading it the first time round. Roarsome. Again, this is an arbitrary tier list. You just kind of have to go with it. Which brings us to our final segment of the evening, graphic novels and collections. As you can see, there are 9. I'm going to try and go quickly. All right, so Hellblazer, Fear Machine. It's convoluted. It's steeped in New Age mysticism and conspiracy. If you've ever had a hippie phase, you'll get the politics behind it. If not the magical nonsense. Low key, if you are curious about the magical nonsense in this book, shows like The Last Podcast on the Left are gonna be your friends if you want to get into like sex magic and standing stones without falling down like the Aleister Crowley rabbit hole. It is a touch long and circuitous, but it's still a pretty solid read. Stega saw it. Also with Hellblazer, the Family Man. I think technically it's like John Constantine Hellblazer. I'm so sorry. I will have the correct title flashing along the screen along with all the creatives. But anyway, the Family Man. John messes up and aids a serial killer. The rest of the book is him getting his ducks together to take the killer down. This one is more psychological than magical, and John's actions really felt inconsistent for who he's been set up to be in like the 3 previous volumes. But it was a solid thriller. Included in this volume are 2 short stories, one on the nature of stories, which was phenomenal, and the other was a nihilistic romp in a dying town that did not impress me and felt tonally divorced from the larger work. For the Family Man itself, I would say Stega saw it, and for the nihilism, it triceratopped. But we're gonna split the difference and just bop. There. Okay. Alan Scott Green Lantern. This is a 6-issue miniseries exploring the life and career of Alan Scott through the lens of his recently uncloseted identity as a gay man. It is a beautiful story about love and loss, and it seeks to be honest about what those experiences might have been like as a man growing into himself in the 40s and 50s. Parts of it were difficult for me to read, mostly because I struggle to engage with queer trauma. But this is just such a thorough reframing of Alan Scott that I had to press on. It is beautifully drawn and an absolute joy. Roarsome. This one is a roarsome read. And then we have Harrow County, Twice Told. This is the 2nd volume in the Harrow County series, and it is definitely, I think, for lovers of the Old Gods of Appalachia podcast. This story sees our resident witchling Emmy meeting her secret twin sister for the first time and struggling over the differences in upbringing and temperament that they may have. This feeds my folktale loving soul. It is wonderfully balanced with the rough-hewn watercolor style of art, but it didn't really feel as strong as the first story, and I wanted more time with the sister after spending so much time exploring Emmy's own complicated feelings towards her legacy. Stega saw it. It's a very solid read. I do recommend Harrow County so far, but this one it didn't shine as much as the first one did. Next, Damnation Diaries. Therapy in Hell. Roarsome. Love the concept. Wish there was more, but it's also good for there to be closed storylines. Amazon's Attack. This is the 2nd one, the one that came out a couple of years ago. And this is the better written companion piece to Tom King's opening Wonder Woman storyline. It stars Yara Flor, Faruka, Nubia, and Mary Marvel. What happens when political relations are poisoned against the Amazons in a series of brutal attacks? And how can that public perception then be, how that public perception can then be weaponized against all women? I felt a little lost reading it, but honestly, that is my own fault for not keeping current. And this is very well paced. It is equal parts biting and humorous, and it links in with the definitive Amazon origin story, Wonder Woman Historia. So that's always gonna gain points in my book. Roarsome. All right. For my seasonal read, I read Foregathered on Christmas Eve. This is a spooky anthology for the Christmas season as four frenemies meet to trade creepy tales on Christmas Eve. It's a fun little read, but the framing narrative did end up being a little bit more interesting than some of the stories. Stegosaur. All right. 2 down, 2 left. All that's okay. Sorry, this one's a little bit rambly. This is kind of my experiment at making a video solely for YouTube. And I don't quite know what I'm doing, but we're going through it. We're living with it. So we have Batman and Robin, Father and Son. This is the first volume of the ongoing Batman and Robin series. In the backdrop of the Gotham War, Damian is finally moving back in with his father. But trust is hard-earned in this family, and he's not quite ready to allow the Batman unfettered access to his heart. While Bruce struggles to connect with his youngest son, a series of genetic experiments threaten Gotham. Can the dynamic duo pull themselves together in time to crack the plot? It's well-paced. There is a wonderful balance between time spent in costume as Batman and Robin and time spent out of costume as Bruce and Damian. And the art style incorporates a lot of movement, which helps keep that energy up. The narrative does tend to let Bruce off a little too easy, I would say, but it is a fun read. I would recommend it for people that want similar familial vibes as Wayne Family Adventures in a bit longer of a format. Awesome. Like, I enjoyed it. I think it's well written. I think it's well drawn. You know, I would recommend. And finally, we have The Good Earth. This is a graphic novel adaptation of the Pearl Buckley novel of the same name. I've never read the novel, so I can't really speak as to its efficacy as an adaptation, but I feel it communicated itself well, and I strongly suspect most of the criticisms I might have for it are more for the novel itself and not the adaptation alone. It keeps itself to a very simplified art style in a limited color palette, which was effective for communicating the down-to-earth nature of the protagonist and helped to limit the potential exoticizing of 20s era China. Stega saw it, and if you're interested, you should too. And that is my January roundup. I'm DinoMightyMiranda. I'm your friendly neighborhood amateur Batman historian. You can find me on TikTok and Blue Sky under those names. Additionally, I have a podcast, The Sidekicks, spelled SEIDKICKS. You can find it on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you listen to podcasts. Me and a friend, we talk about comic books. It comes out roughly every other week. Right now we are doing a comic book movie series where we are watching the movie and reading the book that it adapted. It's been a lot of fun. You can also find me here on YouTube on the Crisis of Infinite Opinion show. I always forget the name of the channel. Oh my gosh, I should have it down by now, but I really don't. I will flash it on here. It'll be down in the links below. You'll see it. You'll see it. Basically, me and some other comic talkers, we debate comic book topics. You can also find me on there doing some of the backup issues as well as all of the recommended reading videos. And finally, I do have a Patreon. Don't pay money to it, please. It is a glorified blog, but it does exist. Just subscribe as a non-paying member. It's fine. There's nothing worth paying for just yet. Just kind of getting the message out there. I apologize that this one was so rambly. Again, I'm kind of experimenting with different formats and different methods of making videos. This one is very different to me. It's intimidating, you know, doing something new, but it's still worth trying. All right, so if you read any of these books, feel free to let me know down below in the comment section. If you have a recommendation for what I should read next, I would love any recommendations to add to my to-read list. I've been DinoMightyMiranda, your friendly neighborhood amateur Batman historian. Catch you on the flip side. Bye.